My name is George Dole. I'm an English teacher here in Moscow. I've lived here for over 12 years, and I'm here to discuss how myself and Igor Shofkinov have developed a methodology for teaching English effectively here in Moscow. I came here 12 years ago. I was before here in Los Angeles as a math teacher, teaching ESL on the weekends. I met my now wife in New York over 20 years ago, and we moved here 12 years ago. And so now I'm primarily an English teacher and sometimes math teacher. And whenever I teach, many times parents, especially moms, ask how we teach, and they want to know what methodology we use. And it's no secret. So I'm going to tell you our secret of how we teach math, how we teach English, and how it's effective. Parents complain. They've been complaining to us as to why their kids don't speak English. And it's no secret because they don't speak English in the class. They listen to English, they read English, but they don't practice speaking English. And if you don't practice speaking a language, you really don't practice the phonetic vocabulary of that language. English has 31 sounds that are not in Russian. Russian has 40 sounds, 40 phonemes that are not in English. If you don't practice saying them, you're not going to have a full understanding of the language because listening and reading are passive. Speaking is active. When you speak, you hear yourself speak. You practice. You practice your larynx of those sounds. You hear yourself monitor it. You're looking at the person. You're thinking. So you're really involved in the language. So if you listen or read it, you're not involved in the language. So what our job is, and what I do, is to inspire students and adults to speak English. When I first came here, I was teaching corporate English, and then adults, test preparation, SAT, GMAT. SSAT for high school, IELTS, TOEFL, and I work primarily now with children from 4 to 17. So here's the secret. When you teach somebody a language, our secret anyway, is to work with something tangible and until they understand how to say it and understand what it is. So in this case, if I was working with a child, I have an example here of a car. And so we work with groups of 3 or 4 sentences, and until the student can repeat them, understand them, and say them with correct English pronunciation. Because just saying them correctly, saying them without correct pronunciation is not good enough. And I'll explain that in a few sentences why that doesn't work. So Igor is going to be my example of a student. So I would start by saying my 3 or 4 sentences. First I would say car.
Car.
It's a car.
It's a car.
It's a blue car.
It's a blue car.
It's a fast blue car.
It's a fast blue car.
Okay, at this point I would stop and we would practice these few sentences, 3 or 4 sentences, until the child or adult can say them correctly as if a fluent and a native speaker would say them. And then we would work on groups of other three or four sentences around the car: hood, engine, headlights, rear view mirror, wheels, trunk, backlights. So we're building not only vocabulary, we're building syntax, we're building verbs and colors, adjectives. So we're really building the vocabulary by just using a simple thing such as a car, a tangible thing. Then at this point I would say to the student, if they could say the sentence back to me, we play a game. So I would say the groups of 3 sentences again after each time we learn the 3 sentences. So I would say car, it's a blue car, it's a fast blue car. And I would ask the student to do it again. So Igor will play the role of student and say the 3 or 4 sentences that we practiced in the beginning. So I would say car, it's a blue car, it's a fast blue car, and Igor would repeat them as if he was a student.
Car, it's a blue car, it's a fast car, it has a hood, it has a trunk, there is an engine inside.
Okay, so along with this, we would actually play this as if it's a game. He went beyond just the 3 or 4 sentences because we would play a game with this, and each time the person would say a correct phrase or near correct phrase of it, even if it was paraphrased and with correct pronunciation, then they would get a card. So once they, in this case, he said like 3 or 4, like 5 or 6 sentences correctly as if he was a student. So once the child meets the same limit or exceeds the limit of correct sentences, then they would get some sort of a reward. And it's really important to say the sounds of the phrases correctly, because if you don't say the 31 sounds near correctly as an English speaker, then you don't understand the person too well. So if I was, say, a French person, and I talked about the car as if it's a car, a blue car, a fast blue car, a big fast blue car, you might not understand that it's the same English that Igor just said and that I just said, because I used the French pronunciation. I didn't use too many of the English phonemes. French has some different phonemes. They have a lot of quiet sounds that are not in French, that are not in English. Luckily, I had 8 years of French, so I could play the role of a French person. But you get the idea that if you don't practice the sounds of the language, you really can't say the language. You don't understand the sounds of the language correct enough to be able to understand what the person is saying, and you can't answer the person. So each class is result-oriented. I really want the child to walk out of the class, as my adult clients do, to walk out being a better English listener, better English thinker, better English speaker than when they came into the class. And they can. So it just requires practice, and as the Russians say, repetition is the mother of education, and it is no more important than in learning a language. Maybe in math you can learn 2 + 2 is 4, and that's it. But in language, it's subjective. You have to practice it. You have to practice the sounds. And it takes time. Language takes time to understand. So ultimately, I aim for the child to be able to say up to 25 questions correctly. Once they have vocabulary, they have verbs, they have adjectives. Now we work on the questions, or the 6 or 8 question words, so they can ask up to 25 questions about something, anything, car, restaurant, things, anything around them, and be able to be just as fluent in English as a native English speaker. So the goal is to get them as close to being as fluent as a native English speaker as possible. And I believe I've been quite successful with this. Some of my students have tremendous awards, which you can see on the sites. So excuse me. What you need to do is people need to talk. And if you don't talk, you really don't get control of the language, because you don't practice the sounds, you don't hear the sounds, you're not used to the sounds, and that's the secret. It's secret for English, the secret for Russian, probably the secret for every language. If you're not used to the sounds of the language, you don't practice the sounds, you can't understand the sounds, you can't say the sounds, you can't communicate in that language. So that's pretty much the secret that we have developed, and it's very effective. We have tremendous results from our clients, and I'm happy to get you those references that people are happy to give to you that have used the results and been more successful at all ages, children, adults, corporate English. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to any questions you have. Thank you. Bye-bye.